Continuing debate, the honourable member for Niagara Falls.
Thank you, Speaker. I rise today to participate in the debate on the Budget Implementation Act, also known as Bill C-69. I will declare from the outset, Speaker, I will oppose this reckless and incompetent Liberal government and their disastrous economic policy, which is contained through this legislation. When the budget was introduced, this Liberal government told Canadians it was adding another $57 billion in new inflationary spending. But guess what, Speaker? The Parliamentary Budget Officer later confirmed that that enormous number was even higher, to the tune of $61.2 billion. That's a miscalculation of over $4 billion. This new inflationary spending only adds more financial fuel to the flames of inflation. And sadly for Canadians, Speaker, as long as this NDP Liberal government stays in power, it's only going to get worse. Already they are costing Canadians more. In fact, the new spending in this budget will cost the average Canadian family an extra $3,687. To Canadians watching at home, just pause and think about that for a moment. What could your family do if you had an extra $3,687 in your bank account? As the Shadow Minister for Tourism and the proud Member of Parliament for Niagara Falls riding, which includes the City of Niagara Falls and the towns of Niagara-on-the-Lake and Fort Erie, may I be the first to suggest a vacation in Niagara Falls, Canada's top leisure tourism destination. When common sense Conservatives proposed to rescind the carbon tax and federal taxes for fuel for the summer to allow Canadians an opportunity to enjoy a vacation, this Liberal government instead criticized those same Canadians and then voted down our motion. But really, it could go towards anything, especially things that will help improve the quality of life for you and your children. Instead, this Liberal Prime Minister will continue to take your hard-earned money and then immediately throw it at the shocking interest charges that his enormous debt has racked up after 9 years. This is simply unsustainable, Speaker. This isn't how you get to a balanced budget either, as the Finance Minister said she would during her fall fiscal update in 2022. According to the Fraser Institute, last year the Liberal government was spending more on paying off its debt than it was spending on childcare benefits and employment insurance benefits. But it gets worse. This year, this NDP Liberal government will spend more taxpayer money on servicing their debt than on health care. Let that sink in for a moment. After 9 years of this Liberal Prime Minister, it feels like we're back in the dying days of the Dalton McGuinty, Kathleen Wynne Liberal government at Queen's Park, where rampant, wasteful and reckless Liberal spending on green energy programs made Ontario's debt the highest of any sub-sovereign state in the world. What's both troubling and astounding is the fact that some members on the Liberal side are from the very same caste and government during that Ontario period. Have they learned nothing, Speaker? After 9 years of this Liberal government, Canadians know prices are up, rent is up, debt is up, taxes are up, and they are fed up. Rent has doubled. Mortgage payments are 150% higher than they were before this current Prime Minister took power. Tent cities exist in almost every major city. Over 50% of Canadians are $200 or less away from going broke. This Liberal government's tax and spend inflation is non-discriminatory. It costs Canadians their hard-earned money and savings, and it impacts Canadians of all walks of life, of every demographic, and in every region of our great country. Young Canadians have had to put their dreams of buying a home on hold, while hard-working Canadians are working overtime or 2 or more jobs just to get by. And retirees who worked hard for their whole lives to build our country are now struggling to hold on to their savings as high inflation and new Liberal taxes drain their bank accounts. Demand at local food banks is at an all-time high. In Niagara Falls, Project Share's food bank served more than 13,000 people last year, a total of 1 in 7 residents. Across Ontario, a report from Feed Ontario revealed that more than 800,000 Ontarians used a food bank between April 2022 and March 2023, an increase of 38% province-wide. These miserable results are the legacy of 9 years of Liberal rule and their disastrous spending and budgetary plans, which have failed at every turn. If Canadians were not already enduring enough financial pain and suffering caused by their federal government, they will take no solace knowing that this Liberal government is committed to quadrupling the carbon tax, driving up the cost on everything from food to groceries to shelter and energy to heat and cool their homes. Their most recent increase was a 23% hike on April 1st. But there is hope, Speaker. There is a solution. In the next federal election, which will be a carbon tax election, Canadians can elect a common-sense Conservative government. Only common-sense Conservatives will axe the tax to bring lower prices for Canadians. We will build the homes Canadians need. We will fix the budgetary finances of this country, and we will address the issues of crime, which this government policies have made only worse, not better in Canada. Speaker, the carbon tax is just one of a series of new tax measures being schemed up by this tax-hungry Liberal government that needs to continuously feed and fund its spending addiction. In the first quarter of this year alone, businesses across Canada saw taxes go up in areas such as CPP and EI premiums, as well as the added burden of the carbon tax. Some also had an alcohol escalator tax hike to worry about, such as those wineries and craft breweries in my riding. And every business is concerned about general costs continuing to go up. For Canadians in need of a home, desiring to rent, or trying to save to buy their first home, they face stiff headwinds. After 9 years of this Liberal government, housing costs have doubled, mortgage costs have doubled, required down payments have doubled, and rent has also doubled. Speaker, more houses were built in 1972 than built in Canada in 2022. And because of this government's habitual overspending ways, Canadians are struggling with increased mortgages and interest rates, which threaten their very future. Just this morning, Global News reported on an Ipsos poll indicating 63% of respondents would continue to remain on the sidelines of the housing market due to higher interest rates. This poll was conducted between June 7th and June 10th. Some 45% maintained that they would not be able to afford a home no matter how much interest rates declined. And sadly, 6 in 10 respondents said they had given up on ever owning a home. After 9 years of Liberal government, Canadians are poor, while Liberal insiders and friends of the Liberal cabinet get rich. This government has screwed up the housing file so bad that in the 2023 Fall Economic Statement, they trumpeted the creation of a new Canadian mortgage charter to save Canadians from the problems this NDP Liberal government created themselves. This government should be ashamed. Speaker, only common-sense Conservatives will axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime so Canadians can focus on getting ahead in their daily lives. After 9 years, it's clearer than ever that this Liberal Prime Minister is not worth the cost, and Budget 2024 makes life worse across the country for Canadians. Prices are up, rent is up, debt is up, taxes are up, and Canadians are fed up. And this Liberal government's time is up, Speaker. I encourage members in all opposition parties to take a stand with Conservatives and vote against this reckless, inflationary federal budget and vote non-confidence in this disastrous Liberal government.
Hear, hear.
Thank you, Speaker.
Questions and comments? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Innovation.
Well, I have to give the Conservatives some credit. Finally, I know it's taken me a long time to reach this conclusion, but they are exceptional at stringing together misleading and false statements into speeches. The member opposite talked about quality of life. He used that phrase in his speech. I want to ask him, our government's budget and the BIA invests in helping Canadians be able to save, to build, or to save to buy their first home. It invests in ensuring that families can save for their children's education easier. It invests in ensuring that kids, over 400,000 more kids, can get food in school. It invests in life-saving medication, which obviously would cost families if it wasn't offered through a national pharmacare program. It invests in student loan forgiveness, in research funding to ensure that students and researchers can do their work at a competitive rate. It invests in helping seniors get their teeth fixed and more childcare spaces, and the list goes on. Does the member opposite oppose every single one of those investments that is designed to improve the quality of life of countless Canadians?
Honourable Member for Niagara Falls.
Thank you, Speaker, and I'd like to thank the member for the question. He talks about investments. It's spending. And they're spending enormous amounts, billions of dollars, in fact, to fix the problems they, in fact, created themselves, Speaker. These programs would not have been needed had this government taken the actions earlier on to fix the problems that we now face. And the housing file, they've spent $89 billion on their national housing strategy. Never has so much been spent to accomplish so little. I mentioned in my speech, this government in 2022 built less homes than they did in 1972. That's a failure on the part of this government.
Question et commentaire.
Questions and comments. The Honourable Member from Lac-Saint-Jean. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you to my colleague for his speech. I'd like to reassure everyone that the Bloc will be voting against this budget. One of the reasons why we will be voting against the budget is the federal government's commitment to the oil and gas industry. We can see that this is $83 billion in the coming years being spent on an industry that's making record profits and harming the planet. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to know if this is one of the reasons why my colleague will be voting against the budget, an industry that does not need this support and is contributing to climate change. The Honourable Member from Niagara Falls.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the member for the question. Again, we're voting against this government and this budget in particular because of their failures over 9 years of being in power. Their actions have caused the affordability crisis that we are facing today. And our hope is that a non-confidence vote will be held in our favor and that a carbon tax election will be held so that a conservative, a common sense conservative, is elected to try and fix the problems that this government has created.
Question et commentaire.
Questions and comments.
Lady Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the member. Mr. Speaker, one thing that the member and I can agree on is that the Liberals have failed to be able to ensure that Canadians have housing across the country. That we can agree on. However, I have not heard a single concrete, sound solution being put forward by the Conservatives. One such thing that is vital that we are talking about today is the Rental Protection Fund. We know that for every one house built, 11 affordable homes are being lost. Yet the Conservatives continue to prop up the same corporations that are swooping in and buying up affordable homes, leaving people unable to access the homes that they need. This is a basic human right. And so my question, Mr. Speaker, to the members, why does he continue to participate in delay tactics to avoid the delay tactics that are keeping Canadians from being able to access the affordable housing that they need and deserve?
In about 30 seconds, the Honourable Member for Niagara Falls.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and perhaps to my colleague. Why did this opposition party that works in tandem with this government vote against our Building Homes and Not Bureaucracy Act? We put forward a piece of legislation that would address the housing crisis in Canada, and they voted to support their Liberal friends.